have a jury trial in the matter of Commonwealth versus Lindsay Clancy.
The Lindsay Clancy murder trial is officially underway.
One by one, she wrapped exercise bands around each one of the kids' necks and pulled until their little bodies were limp and lifeless.
The prosecution says she deliberately and knowingly murdered her 3 young children in cold blood, but the defense is firing back.
She's living her own hell. She knows what happened with those kids, and she wanted to die. And he knew when he brought this charge that it was going to kill the soul of this young woman.
Case of Lindsay Clancy, a Massachusetts labor and delivery nurse, a wife, a mother of 3, and now a permanent paraplegic defendant on trial for the murders of her own children. A case that doesn't ask if she killed them. She admits she wrapped those exercise bands around their tiny necks one by one and pulled until their bodies went limp. But rather a much harder, more haunting question, was she a cold, calculating killer who orchestrated a 45-minute window of opportunity to methodically strangle 5-year-old Cora, 3-year-old Dawson, and 8-month-old Callan so she could escape a life she no longer wanted? Or was she a woman so profoundly shattered by postpartum psychosis that the very fabric of her reality tore apart, leaving a hollow shell that could no longer distinguish between love and murder, between saving her babies and destroying them? And if you can hold that question in your mind without flinching, you might begin to understand why this trial, unfolding in a Plymouth County courtroom.
All persons having anything to do before the Honorable William Sullivan, Justice of the Superior Court now sitting in Plymouth, within and for the Commonwealth. Draw names of your attendants and you shall be heard. God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This court is now in session. Please be seated.
Good morning, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, please.
Your Honor, before the court today, we have the jury trial in the matter of Commonwealth versus Lindsay Clancy.
Judge William F. Sullivan began by giving jurors a few instructions.
Under the steady hand of Judge William F. Sullivan has become one of the most wrenching legal battles in modern American memory. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Sprague, opened with a portrait of the children so vivid it sat in the courtroom like a ghost. Cora, who loved sparkly dresses and tried to convince her preschool teachers her name was Sophia like the Disney princess, Dawson with his raspy little voice and obsession with fire trucks, and Callan, all...
She had just turned 5. She was sweet, silly, smart. She loved sparkly dresses and wearing bows in her hair. She loved princesses and baby dolls. She even tried to convince her preschool teachers at the beginning that her name was Sophia because she loved the Disney character Sophia the First so very much. Dawson. He was 3, a boy's boy. He was a bit rambunctious, but funny, full of energy. He loved trucks, construction trucks, fire trucks, and he spoke with a raspy little voice. Callan. Callan was just 8 months old. Always smiling, with chunky cheeks, a sweet little baby.
Chunky cheeks and perpetual smiles, and then told the jury with surgical precision how on January 24th, 2023, the defendant transformed a seemingly ordinary snow day afternoon into a meticulously planned triple filicide, starting with a call to CVS to confirm they had pediatric Marilax in stock, a search on her phone for Takeout 3V, and the exact driving distance from the family's Duxbury home to that Plymouth restaurant.
Day, actually.
But in the afternoon, the Commonwealth says there was a change in Lindsay.
In the late afternoon, around 4 p.m., the defendant searched on her phone for kids' Marilax. She searched Takeout 3V, and she opened the Apple Maps on her phone and searched the route that it would take to get from their house to the 3V restaurant in Plymouth. She searched how much time and how far it was. Now, this restaurant had been a place that the family had eaten before, but wasn't their normal takeout spot.
A calculation that gave her just enough time to pull it off after sending her husband Patrick out to fetch dinner and laxatives while she stayed behind with the kids. And as soon as his taillights disappeared, the state argues she moved with the precision of someone who knew exactly what she was doing, bringing the children to the basement, separating Dawson from the others, and using exercise bands, those stretchy, innocent-looking therapy bands, as ligatures pulling with deliberate, sustained force until first Dawson, then Cora, then the baby were dead, leaving the band still knotted around their necks as she walked upstairs, grabbed a kitchen knife, crushed a cocktail of prescription pills into a cup inscribed with the words, "Because kids," locked herself in the master bedroom, slashed her own throat and wrists in front of a full-length mirror, pushed the bed aside, opened the window, and hurled herself out into the January cold, not as a failed suicide gesture, but as a final act that snapped her spine and left her forever wheelchair-bound. And when Patrick returned to find the nightmare in his basement, his screams of, "She killed the kids."
This is really hard to hear. The prosecution describes Patrick returning home to a chilling scene.
When he finds each child with an exercise band still wrapped around their neck, he screams for help, and he says, "She killed the kids." Efforts made to resuscitate Cora and Dawson were futile, but first responders from Duxbury and the surrounding communities were persistent, and they kept trying to resuscitate them all the way to the hospital. But when they arrived at the hospital,
shattered the quiet of that upscale coastal neighborhood and launched an investigation that would uncover, according to the Commonwealth, not a psychotic break, but a pattern of manipulation, control, and selective disclosure. A woman who shopped for therapists the way some people shop for shoes, discarding clinicians the moment they recommended inpatient care, who lied to her husband and her doctors, who exaggerated symptoms yet somehow managed to play in the snow with her children that very morning, who resented the demands of motherhood and, in the end, decided that if she couldn't have the life she envisioned, neither could her children, making the deliberate, premeditated choice to execute them with extreme atrocity and cruelty before attempting to take her own life, which the prosecution points out she botched because she didn't anticipate surviving the fall, and now sits in a hospital bed, paralyzed, yes, but criminally responsible because she knew exactly what she was doing. She appreciated the wrongfulness.
And here's how the Commonwealth ended its opening.
the fact that someone may suffer or have a mental illness, a mental disease or defect, is not the end of the inquiry when it comes to guilt or innocence. It is whether a person can appreciate the wrongfulness or criminality of the conduct and conform their conduct to the law. Do they know what they were doing, and can they control their actions? The evidence in this case will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this defendant coldly and efficiently executed first Dawson, then Cora, and finally Callan. One by one, she strangled the life out of each one of them. She did so with no hesitation, with deliberate premeditation, and extreme atrocity and cruelty. She is criminally responsible for the murders because the evidence will prove to you that she knew exactly what she was doing. She drew her husband out of the house, their father, so that she had the opportunity and the time.
And she could have stopped, yet she didn't. But then Kevin Reddington stood up for the defense, and within minutes the entire courtroom shifted on its axis. Because if the Skates case is a straight line from motive to massacre, the defense's case is a hurricane of mental anguish that...
The government says that this is a situation, it's not a referendum on women's having babies and having postpartum psychosis, postpartum depression, but it sure as hell is. Because you're going to hear, consistent with what His Honor told you in the instructions, consistent with the obligation that the government has when they brought this charge. Tim Cruz, the DA, right in the front row, brought this charge. He knew, as did his office, the facts of this case.